And time to get the latest business news, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Yuka Roy. Hello, Yuka.
Hi, Annette.
You're going to start with the world's biggest oil producers who are currently meeting to curb the falling prices caused by a weak demand, which of course is linked to the coronavirus
outbreak. Well, OPEC, a group of 14 major oil exporters led by Saudi Arabia, is wrapping up an expanded session with other producers, including Russia. The goal is to agree on steeper production cuts to shore up the market. The group on Thursday decided to push for reducing output by 1.5 million barrels per day through the end of this year. Russia has been cooperating with OPEC since 2016, but is reportedly against backing the latest proposal and wants to only extend the current supply cut deal. Oil prices have plunged more than 20% since the start of the year as the coronavirus outbreak slowed factories and reduced air travel. Shirley Sitman reports.
Delegates at the OPEC meeting got their temperatures checked at the door. They saluted each other with their feet. Then they got to business, finding ways to stop the virus from hitting their industry. Crude oil prices have dropped by more than 20% since the year started. OPEC countries hope that by cutting production, that decline would stop. They want to cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day, but are facing stiff resistance from non-member allies like Russia. Demand for crude oil has declined as the coronavirus spread in China first and then in dozens of other countries, disrupting air travel. Customers have canceled flights, companies have scrapped business meetings, and trade shows have been postponed. Struggling British airline Flybe collapsed on Thursday. Other carriers are struggling.
We could see the effect on revenues exceed 100 billion, around about 19% of global passenger revenues. This would be a revenue shock equivalent to what was seen in the global financial crisis.
The coronavirus has also caused chaos in industries across the world, starting with China, where thousands of companies were forced to shut down temporarily, affecting their business partners and clients across the world.
Well, oil prices actually plunged further on news that hopes are fading for a deal to be reached at that OPEC meeting, with Russia and other non-members resisting the idea of deeper cuts. The international benchmark WTI down 4.5%, a quarter percent rather, and the US Brent well below the $50 mark. On the stock markets, shares have plunged back into the red at the end of an extremely volatile week of big swings both up and down. European shares deeply in the red at midday, slumping more than 3% on coronavirus fears, the airline industry being particularly hard hit. Asian shares were also down this Friday, with Nikkei closing the week down almost 3%, with almost all the stocks on the board in the red. Market jitters are not going away, even as the US Federal Reserve cut interest rates earlier in the week and Congress passed a stimulus package to combat the spread of COVID-19. As traders looked for safer places to put their money, the yield on the US 10-year Treasury note, which is a return that investors get on the government debt they buy, has dropped to an all-time low. The decline has continued since early Friday. It's currently down to 0.75%. The collapse of the benchmark Treasury yield has caused the US dollar to lose its value too, currently trading at $1.15 per euro and 105 yen per dollar. Now, as the coronavirus outbreak has hit the airline industry hard, Airbus logged 0 orders in the month of February. The European plane maker did, however, deliver 55 aircraft in the month, bringing its total for the year so far to 86, only slightly below the same period last year. It's the second time this year that a leading manufacturer has failed to generate sales in a calendar month. Boeing drew a blank in January for the first time in decades. Meanwhile, Boeing may be edging closer to getting its grounded 737 MAX fleet certified to fly again. The head of the Federal Aviation Administration in the US says that he thinks a final test flight could come within a few weeks. The agency is currently working through the last few software and documentation issues. The coronavirus outbreak has hit many sectors around the world, from manufacturing to tourism to services. Here in France, restrictive measures put on public gatherings have been put in place in some parts of the country that reported an outbreak. Couples planning to tie the knot have not been spared.
The Nacelle estate was a dream venue for many couples planning to get married. But now that dream is inaccessible. The estate is in Oise, north of Paris, an area with a large number of COVID-19 infections. Couples planning to get married there have had to find alternative locations.
It was a catastrophe. It's really tough to reorganize your wedding in just 1 week.
Charlotte Bourillon lives in Oise, so she can't even plan a wedding elsewhere. She's stranded at home, hoping the restrictive measures would soon end.
It was like a cold shower, a leap into the unknown. We're thinking about all of the consequences.
Consequences that could have a major impact on local businesses. With marriages already being postponed, wine, beverages, and food deliveries have been suspended, and those providing them are stuck with the goods.
I invest about 2,000 or 3,000 euros in every event.
And weddings represent about 20% of his gross sales. As the virus spreads in several French regions, the blow is likely to worsen, with many not just postponing but canceling their parties altogether and settling for small family meals.
Moving on, the chief executive of JP Morgan Chase, the largest US bank, is recovering after having emergency heart surgery on Thursday. Jamie Dimon has temporarily been replaced by JP Morgan's deputy president and deputy chief operating officer. The bank says he's awake and is expected to be back at work soon. Dimon has been the bank's CEO for over a decade and has become a larger-than-life figure on Wall Street. The 63-year-old executive's health scare has raised new questions about who could succeed him for the long term. He had already been sidelined for a few months back in 2014 after being diagnosed with throat cancer. Now, as concern mounts over potential shortage of surgical masks because of coronavirus, 3M, the world's leading mask maker, is ramping up its production. The company says that it has so far avoided major supply chain disruptions as it sources materials from regional suppliers within the United States instead of relying on Chinese factories. The US government is seeking 35 million additional masks per month from 3M.
Since the coronavirus outbreak started in January, has really been increasing. And we have been increasing capacity to try to meet that demand. But it is very high. Since we have this regional manufacturing model, many of our items are coming regionally, and we're working with our supply partners very closely to monitor the situation. If we start to see any disruptions, we'll certainly work to alert our customers.
And of course, governments around the world are calling on people who are not sick to avoid just rushing to buy face masks.
Yes, indeed. And it's extraordinary the impact that the coronavirus is having on all sectors of the economy.
On all sectors.
Indeed. Thanks for that.